Biggest example for this would be the Pulse Polio program. Who doesn't know about Do Booms in the Kike, right? So I think that is the biggest success. How much stress they might be having at home. What are the triggering factors? All of that I sit down with them and I actually analyze. And my role as a physician is that Maharashtra as a state is pretty advanced when it comes to healthcare. What medicines they're taking, how many medicines they brought in today, how many medicines they've taken from the clinic, what is the timing that at which they came. So we have a track of all of those things.
The doctor per ratio for
Yes.
these much of population is
Yes.
there's a shortage. So we
Yes,
need
absolutely.
more doctors working at the grassroots level.
If a patient comes to me and they have hypertension, so I do prescribe them hypertension medicines, but at the same time, I don't say that, okay, you need to take these medicines, and I don't let them go just like that. Instead of just prescribing medicine and telling them that you have this disease and this is the medicine that you need to take. Time has come where even Ayurveda and allopathy can work together. So do you remember that ad, Condom, theek se bolo? I feel like many people from the 90s actually remember that ad. Wear a mask, make sure you use an air purifier, don't burst crackers in the gully.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 4 of our podcast. Today we have Dr. Snigdha with us. Hey doctor.
Hi Kanchan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine too.
Thank you for agreeing amidst your busy and hectic schedule.
Of course, Kanchan. I mean, we go back to MBBS days. I don't think, I want to change that. I want to keep that, that energy between the two of us. Always.
Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Snigdha Pandey. I'm a public health specialist. I'm basically a senior resident right now in Government Medical College, Nagpur. So I completed my MBBS from JJM Medical College, Karnataka, and now I pursued my MD in community medicine from GMC Nagpur, and now I'm working as an SR there.
Wow.
So just to add a little bit on, my area of interest is maternal and child health. I create content around it on YouTube as well as on Instagram. So if you have anyone who thinks that might benefit from it, share the profile.
Definitely. I'll link your profile below.
Amazing.
Snigdha, you always wanted to take up preventive and social medicine?
Wow, what a question. I think, this is the question that is asked to everyone, no matter which branch they choose. And for me, the answer is absolutely no, a resounding no. I don't think anyone wishes or hopes that they get PSM, right? My original goal and my area of interest was always pediatrics. I was in love with kids. I wanted to work for kids. I wanted to do something for mothers in that sphere. And so, as I prepared for my NEET PG and I got the rank, I understood that I need to actually analyze what my strengths and what my weaknesses are. What are my skill sets? What is things that people really need right now? And so I actually went into a 1 week spiral where I was thinking, okay, which branch can I take? And then, it all boiled down to I wanted clinical experience. And I also really loved working with children and mothers. And I felt like PSM was the right choice for me. And I stand by it even today. I feel like it's given me the freedom to do whatever I want. The college I've chosen is amazing. My department is amazing and the most supportive people.
That's great. So, how is it different from other clinical branches?
So I wouldn't say that preventive medicine is very different from other clinical branches. I feel like it's a synergy. Clinical
Okay.
branches go alongside preventive medicine. As an example, we actually have a geriatric clinic in our center and an ANC clinic in our center. So
Okay.
whenever patients come, we are the first responders and we give them the early medicines that are required. If the patient does not heal and if the patient is still not recovering, then we refer them. So this sort of a system wherein you act sort of like a GP, sort of like a family medicine physician, and then the clinical side also comes in. So I feel like both of them go very much hand in hand, and it's not a competition, it's not a clash, it's a
Okay.
synergy.
Okay. So, how does your branch bridge the gap between hospitals and the community?
Yeah. So when it comes to bridging the gap, it actually works at three levels. The first one is
Okay.
the individual level. So
Mm-hmm.
as a community medicine physician, I'm supposed to look at the problem of the health in a system. I'm not supposed to look at it like just tailored to an individual, right?
Okay.
So when it comes to the individual level, we go around making sure that we refer them to appropriate people. We make sure that there's enough health education at the individual level. So I'll just share a few examples with you to make it easy. If a patient comes to me and they have hypertension, so I do prescribe them hypertension medicines, but at the same time, I don't say that, okay, you need to take these medicines, and I don't let them go just like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's as a preventive medicine specialist, it's my role to actually sit down with them, counsel them, find out what are the socio cultural factors that actually affect their disease. So, for example, how much salt they're taking in with their family, how much stress they might be having at home, what are the triggering factors. All of that I sit down with them and I actually analyze. And my role as a physician is that. When it comes to the family level, again, I try to not just, as a community, we try not just to treat the person, but the entire family.
Mm-hmm.
So, whenever a patient of hypertension comes to us, we might actually go in and call the family member in and say, this is the condition of your patient or the family member, and these are the steps that you need to take, and the steps are not just for him to take, it's for you as well. So changing their diet, making sure that there's appropriate protein in their diet, making sure that they are compliant to their medicines, all of this is along with the family as well. And the third is the community. So understanding the social, cultural, environmental factors that actually affect this person's condition. So again, taking the example of a patient with hypertension, he might have certain preconceived notions कि अरे मुझे दवाई की जरूरत नहीं है, या मेरा hypertension इतना है क्या कि I need medicines. So all of those concerns and all of those problems we actually address and make sure that there is a three-pronged approach: the individual, the family, and then the community. And that's how things might actually change for that person.
So, that was a quite bird's eye view of how it works. But
Yeah.
how often do you even cross check if they're following what you're preaching? How does it work?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is the essence of preventive and social medicine. So we have so many people in our department who have thesis or a paper or a review on this one particular topic,
Hmm.
whether someone is compliant to their medicines or not. So this is a
Okay.
very favorite topic, whether it's a TB patient, whether it's a hypertensive patient, whether it's an ANC who's just taking iron and folic acid tablets. So there are certain systems in place, plus students themselves are very eager and they want to know and they want to sort of research this area, whether what
Hmm.
a doctor tells them and how a doctor tells them actually
Hmm.
influences their decision to take the medicine or not. In fact, recently we actually had my own thesis wherein we sent messages to women telling them this is the time to take their medicines, have they taken the medicines or not. So we made sure that there's compliance, and that was the whole aim of that study. From one point of view, there were many other objectives, but one of the main objectives was, are they being compliant to their medicines?
Okay.
So
So,
we don't just, sorry
okay.
to interrupt you, but we don't just stop there. We make sure that whatever reasons that they have, we actually address them. We actually convince them and actually change their mindset a little bit. So even 5% change might actually influence their health by about 100%, might bring about that much improvement. So that's the area that we really work in.
Wow. So, this means you must be keeping a track of all this and you must be recording it somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
how
So
does.
we have a system in place. I'm sure you've heard of the NPNCD program, the
Yes.
National Program for Non-Communicable Diseases. So
Yes.
that in that itself, there is a built-in system where there is a PHC that we have taken care of, and
Hmm.
in that PHC, whichever patient comes, we actually make sure that we note down not just their age, sex, and what their condition is, but also what medicines they're taking, how
Hmm.
many medicines they brought in today, how many medicines they've taken from the uh, clinic, what is the timing that at which they came. So we have a track of all of those things.
Okay. So, do you think all the PHCs are that well funded or well structured to carry out all these? If you had to say that something has to be improved or it is a perfect picture, what do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel for every plan, there is room for improvement. There's always. So the setup that we are working in currently, it works smoothly. But I don't think the same system works everywhere else. I also will take the liberty to say that Maharashtra as a state is pretty advanced when it comes to healthcare. You might not go another like 200 kilometers, maybe you might find PHCs, but that might not be the case for the rest of the country. So in the rest of the country, it is important that we actually enforce this a little bit more. So
Okay.
not every system is perfect, but we need that manpower, and we need we need people to actually
You mean to
start
say the doctor per ratio for
Yes.
these much of population is
Yes.
there's a shortage. So we
Yes,
need
absolutely.
more doctors working at the grassroots level.
Yeah, and
So
not just doctors. I think we also need nurses. I think we also need staff. And I feel like even ASHA workers, they are really the backbone of so many programs that we run. So everyone has a role to play. So if we can get all of them to get motivated and to actually do their work, then it will be a perfect system. So again, recently we had done a study in our institute itself where we took in the ASHAs and we found out what their motivation level was.
can you
And
tell what is an ASHA worker to the audience,
yeah,
to
of
the
course.
non-medicos?
Okay. So basically, an ASHA worker is someone who actually has just finished maybe just 10th pass, but she is a very integral part of that particular community. She's a woman, she is having whatever level of education, but she's very motivated to actually go into the community and do work for the health of the community. That's how you actually employ them.
I
That's
have a personal question. We
yeah.
all have house helps and maids in our house. They can
Yes.
apply for this job.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have enough of education, but there's a cutoff for it. I think it has changed this year. I think when we were doing MBBS, it was 8th standard, but I think it has changed this year. So according to that, if they have completed their education, they can totally apply for it and they
Wow.
can be appointed. So their work is they go from place to place, from community to community, and they basically educate people, and not just educate them, make them aware of the healthcare facilities that's available in that area. So
Okay.
that's their main role. And then, slowly they get so integrated into the community as healthcare worker representatives that after a point, whatever they say is actually taken at face value. So if you convince the ASHA worker and if you take her into, the whole
Confidence.
process, yes, then it becomes very easy for the doctors even to break into the community.
Nice. I
Yeah.
think I interrupted you while you were saying
No,
something about
yes.
your institution.
Yeah. So I was just saying that there was a study that was conducted on ASHA workers and their motivation and what actually motivates them. And it's so interesting to note that their motivations are the same that you and I might have. But the fact that they work at grassroots levels makes their job very hard. So basically, it just shows that ASHA workers are so essential to the entire machinery. And if you convince them, you can really sort of influence so many people at the same time.
Okay. So, Dr. Snigdha, I want to know what is the difference between preventive and curative medicine? Because we have used that vocabulary quite often now in this podcast, preventive. So, can you emphasize on this?
Sure. So when you look at curative medicine, it might just target one particular person. But when you look at preventive medicine, it actually targets the entire community. So when you look at it from a socio-economic, cultural point of view, when you look at it from their family's point of view, when you look at it from their gender and age point of view, all of these factors sort of start talking to you and telling you where the real problem is. And then you tackle that problem instead of just prescribing medicine and telling them that you have this disease and this is the medicine that you need to take. It also involves a lot of counseling. So we believe that change is nearby. We believe that it just needs a little bit of push from our end for that change to come. So that really motivates us and we keep the track going. The second thing is, again, there's not much difference between a curative or a clinician and someone who's like us, someone who's doing community medicine. I feel like both of them have integrated really strongly into each other. It's like I said, our geriatric clinic, we usually reference it to someone else, to an MD medicine that we believe in, to an MD medicine, or even a respiratory medicine specialist that we actually feel like, okay, this might work for this person. So it really works like a synergy. And I feel like time has come where even Ayurveda and allopathy can work together.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, also, I had a question. You think prevention is undervalued in India?
So, we come from a very rich land, right? A
Hmm.
land that talks about Ayurveda, a land that is rich in traditions, cultures. So, it's very difficult for a modern medicine to actually penetrate, but still, it
Hmm.
has penetrated a lot. Another thing is that from the ancient times, we do actually still believe in prevention. So,
Hmm.
if someone has cold, then बोलते हैं अदरक की चाय पी लो. If someone, घर के नुस्खे are the most easiest, and they are the starting point of preventive medicine. So, I think preventive medicine is very integrated into Indian culture and Indian values. So, it's
Hmm.
not separate, but definitely, it has not gotten its due yet. But I'm sure it will, because I feel like with the advent of social media, I feel like many clinicians have also started working and talking about health education and preventive medicine.
Hmm. Previously, you mentioned there was a program for prevention of communicable diseases,
Yes.
government design program. Why
Yes.
do you think so many of the programs fail despite being planned well? Like, I'll
Okay.
give you an example. So,
Yeah.
like, there was this national mental health awareness program or something.
Yeah.
Initially, it took off a good start, but
Yeah.
then it didn't quite work out as it was anticipated.
Right.
Why?
Right. So I'll tell you one thing. I actually have an opposing view on this. I feel
Okay.
like so many of our programs, be it Pulse Polio program,
Mm.
or be it vaccine preventable disease surveillance program, so many diseases have been actually eradicated from the country, and it has worked so well. Like I said,
Okay.
the biggest example for this would be the Pulse Polio program. Who
Mhm.
doesn't know about Do Wounds in the Kike, right? So I think that is the biggest success. And everyone tends to look at the failures rather than looking at the success. Another example I want to cite is, I think, about family planning. So do you remember that ad, condom, ठीक से बोलो? I feel like many people from the 90s actually remember that ad. That is part of the strategy of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So many people don't know about the successes. Everyone
हम
tends
दो
to focus
हमारे
on the
दो.
failures. Exactly, exactly. These are all things that were like very strategically planted, and these are all part of our daily lives, and we feel like uska kuch matlab nahi hai, but actually it was done very strategically. So,
I
it's
like
not like,
I like how you showed the optimistic side. Now I
yeah,
want to tell you
absolutely.
why I brought this up.
Sure.
Now, the currently everyone that is complaining about is the air quality
Quality.
index.
Right, right,
So
right.
it is literally off the roof in Delhi and the
Hmm.
neighboring areas. So
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
what do you think is going wrong, and what do you think like I we cannot obviously speak up for the government, but if some measures we as individuals, responsible citizens, we can adapt and we can just
Yeah,
help, what can it
yeah,
be?
absolutely. So I think the first thing is, at the individual level, it's important that we wear masks. It's important that when the AQI reaches a certain point, we actually start using air purifiers in our house. And the third thing is making sure that the elders and the children at least are protected, because they are the most susceptible, even
Hmm.
pregnant women, lactating women. So making sure that the environment is good for them. At the community level, I feel like it's important for each one of us to realize that there is a season for this, and this happens during the winter season. So starting
Okay.
to take precautions during that season.
Do you think
And
it
the
will
third and the
worsen
most
further?
important,
Do you
yeah,
think
of
it?
course, I feel like population is on the rise. I feel like people are just getting more and more prone to injuries and prone to diseases as well. I don't think um, having a healthy diet, having a healthy lifestyle is something that people are actually looking at right now in
Hmm.
India. It's become like a luxury. So
Exactly.
fixing that first will actually make sure that the problem can reduce. But like I said, we need to take precautions as a community. So as a community, it's very important that
Hmm.
we understand that Diwali ke time pe patake na phode, and winter is the time that you need to gear up. So
Hmm.
that those aspects, I think, as a community. So if we do these things, definitely there is a brighter future.
if you had to like mention 3 to-do list, ये follow
Yeah,
करो, at least prevention ही हो जाएगा.
yeah, absolutely. Wear a mask. Make sure you use an air purifier. Don't burst crackers in Diwali.
आ जाएंगे आप सारे work people.
आपको वही चाहिए. आओ कमेंट करो.
So also you mentioned how our lifestyle is changing. You
Yeah.
mentioned this. So you think the way we are living is becoming a
Hmm.
pandemic, like our habits and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as at an individual level, it's very important to start understanding that your habits are the building blocks for not just you, your health, but also that of your family. So there are studies that actually say that if you tend to drink alcohol, your kids will also tend to drink alcohol. If you smoke, your kids will also smoke. So I think changing that, making sure that your kids, you, your family, if not for yourself, make that change for your family and for your kids, that you adopt a healthier lifestyle. So, like I said, even when a patient comes to us with hypertension, we prescribe the DASH diet to everyone, the whole family. We say कि आप भी अपनी diet change करो, आप भी ज्वार खाना, आप भी millets खाना शुरू करो, because that will make sure that it benefits not just them but also the entire family, and makes them follow a healthy diet as well.
Also, I'm curious, doctor, when you talk to a person who's grown up
Yeah.
believing these are the things, and his beliefs or her beliefs are quite deep rooted, and one day
Yeah.
you just show up and do this, do that, that's good for the community.
Yeah.
You must I mean, it won't be taken in a positive way. How do you handle that behavior change? How do you try to
Yes.
convince them?
I think it's such a relevant question. So I'll give you the example of No Tobacco Day. We just celebrated it, and we basically had a talk with all of the people who come to the PHC. So we start with people who actually benefit from our services. We made sure that they're assembled together, and we set out to give them a talk. Now, what happened is, like, through the talk, we actually spoke about addictions and drugs in specific. But then a woman from the audience actually got up and she asked, my son is actually addicted to his phone. So
Okay.
can you please do a session on this? And for me, I think that is the greatest win. The win is those few people who actually think that, okay, whatever she's saying, whatever they're conveying, it's actually useful, and please do it in this direction as well, because this is the problem that we are facing too. So I think that trust and that space that's created, I think that's the most important thing. So slowly and steadily there is change and there is hope. We have to do our part and make sure that we contribute.
And what are the skills that you were mentioning earlier that you people need to have these
Need
skills
to have.
to be in this
Yeah.
profession?
I think the most important skill is communication.
Oh,
Okay, to be able to
exactly.
communicate effectively. The person that's in front of you should not feel judged, but at the same time, you have to show care. And at the same time, you have to show authority. So that line is very, thin. And if you cross that line, it can be offensive to someone. So I'll just give you an example. One of my very close friends, we were in the OPD, which is the immunization OPD. So we have the rabies clinic and the immunization clinic that we run, and a mother had just come in. So the baby's weight happened to be a little low. So then what happened was, we usually as women step up and we ask them how many times you breastfed, and what is your daily pattern, and we are very gentle about it. But on that particular day, there was an intern in the department who was male, and suddenly he just started saying, do you feed your baby properly? So I think, then that question became very, like, we were also feeling awkward. The mother also felt awkward. And then we had to like take the intern away and tell him that there is a way to actually
To
approach your patient.
yes.
Yeah. So when you crack that and when you're able to do that, you'll be able to bring about positive change.
Any
So
any myths in your field that you want to just clear it out? People just blindly follow and you come across it very often.
oh yes, I think the biggest myth is मुझे दवाई की जरूरत नहीं है. So someone having diabetes, their diabetes, their blood glucose level
पत्तों
is
से
through the
ठीक
roof,
हो जाएगा वो
300.
कुछ पत्तों से.
Exactly. Their diabetes will be 300 plus, and they will have the audacity to ask us, बिना दवाई के ठीक हो जाएगा क्या? And we just have to be like, नहीं, दवाइयाँ तो जरूरी है. Then they are like, नहीं, blood sugar तो कम हो गया, अभी दवाइयाँ बंद कर दूं क्या? But then we have to counsel them कि नहीं, blood sugar is less because you are taking the medicines. So
Exactly.
आप lifestyle changes करिए. Whenever I always tell this to my patients that whenever you look at medicines, look at them at buying you some time. You know, that's the medicine that's going to buy you time to make lifestyle changes. So the most important thing to do is to change your lifestyle. But the medicines are only going to buy you time. So look at it in that way and make sure that you change yourself accordingly. और
Okay.
मेडिसिन को दुश्मन
Do
नहीं
you
समझना है.
think you can categorize community medicine as
Yeah.
pre-COVID and post-COVID? Do you see any differences in the health preparedness?
Right. So for sure, I feel like people have become more aware. People are waking up to the fact that the healthcare was not prepared at the time of COVID. I think we as doctors knew. You know, when I was working as an intern, I knew and I wished and I prayed that एक और बंदा होता, एक और बंदी होती ना मेरे साथ मेरी ड्यूटी शेयर करने के लिए, तो लोड कम हो जाता. You know, we know the patient load and we know how tough it is to work through internship.
Definitely.
But people were not aware of this. So I think today people question and people say कि अरे enough healthcare है कि नहीं इंडिया में, enough doctors है कि नहीं इंडिया में. So I think that change is drastic and I think that's what has changed a lot. The second thing is I feel people have become more receptive. So someone, obviously many people, very sad to say this, but many people lost their loved ones. So
Yeah.
now what's happened is that
Unfortunately.
their view, yes, very unfortunately. So now their view has changed. Now they feel like, what is it that we can do to actually make sure that ऐसा दोबारा कभी ना हो. So that viewpoint has also come in.
Also, my personal question: how do you reduce
Yeah.
your screen time?
I think everyone is struggling with this. So the best way to reduce screen time is actually to have an app on your phone that tells you, "Abhi screen time khatam ho gaya hai, abhi band kar do phone." But I think it has become so integrated into our system. Like I feel like I'm working on the laptop, and then I feel like I have double screen time. Kuch to bhi something will be playing. Me and my roommate will be sitting, and something will be playing, and then I'll be scrolling
So,
on my phone separately.
so given this digital era, do you think any
Yeah.
AI tool will be introduced in your studies in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I would give you an example of my own thesis. So,
Okay.
I basically created messages for antenatal mothers who are pregnant and they're going to deliver in the next 9 months.
Okay.
So, I wanted to send them voice messages because they're not all educated.
Mhm.
So, for using the voice, I actually framed messages for all of the women. And then I was like, abhi voice kahan se leke aun? So I actually put all of that into a software, and that software had its own voice where you could alter the
Wow.
pitch, you could alter the volume, and that's how I actually landed up. And I
Amazing
actually
use of
gave them
artificial intelligence.
exactly. I actually gave a very specific, signal. I said you have to create a voice that is empathetic, that sounds like a woman, that's relatable. The pitch has to be this and that. So that's how things are changing now, and this is just 2 years ago. So today, they're using AI for all sorts of things. They're using AI to alert patients on when to take medicines. They're using AI to chat with patients, especially in mental health. I feel like AI is definitely making some sort of a breakthrough. Even when it comes to breastfeeding, childbirth, AI is making breakthrough because there are so many taboo subjects, taboo topics. I feel like if you're a person on the other side, you might not be able to communicate that freely with them because you feel like, oh, you're getting judged. But with AI, it's free of judgment.
See, it's so easy for you to explain who is educated or a medico like myself. When you have to explain to an uneducated person and there is language barrier, how do you keep the patience and temperament of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this is so important for a medical professional. So I'll just give you my own example again. I've been brought up in Kerala, but I did my MBBS in Karnataka. And then I came to Maharashtra to do my MD. So, but in my head, all of these three regions have their own language. And in my head, it was very important for me to learn the particular language because I experienced this very early on that a patient looked at me and she said, "ये तो बाहर से आई है, इसको कुछ नहीं मालूम होगा." Because she doesn't know the language, just because I don't know the language. So I think it's very important to understand that building
That's
trust
very intriguing.
building trust is very important and you need language. So
Now
that
that you have
urge to learn.
mentioned Can you speak in Malayalam at least for the next question?
Of course I can. Of course I can. അപ്പൊ എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കര ആഗ്രഹമായിരുന്നു ഇവിടെ വന്നിട്ട് ഇവിടുത്തെ ലാംഗ്വേജ് ലേൺ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി, ഇവിടുത്തെ ആൾക്കാരിൽ കൂടെ എടുക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ തീരുമാനിച്ചു ഇവിടുത്തെ ലാംഗ്വേജ് ലേൺ ചെയ്തിട്ടേ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. which basically means that I had the urge to learn the language of the land that I'm in. And so I decided that I have to learn the language. Ani mala Marathi pan yete, Kannada ಗೊತ್ತು.
ಕನ್ನಡ ಬರುತ್ತೆ.
ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬರುತ್ತೆ.
ಸಾಕು
You know?
If you had to give a message to all these young medicos who are like, juggling right now, NEET PG counseling is coming up. So if you had to give a message to them, if you have to take up community medicine or not, what is your message?
So I would say you really have to calculate what your skill sets are. If your skill sets are a match to what is required in community medicine, or for that matter, any branch. If you're an introvert, you might be more towards, going into that lab area, being a radiologist, being a pathologist. If you're an extrovert, welcome to the branch. If you're someone who has amazing clinical diagnosis, you should definitely try medicine. Everyone has a particular skill set, and it's important to actually identify that and then fit whatever's available for you and see if that's where you would be able to get. You will excel. And I want to tell all the NEET PG aspirants that jo bhi hota hai, you're a doctor, nobody can take that away from you. That's the first lesson that I learned after coming here. Taking PSM as a branch was not my dream, but the first lesson I learned was
by Dr. Snigdha
was that you will always be a doctor first. You can't forget your clinical side. You can't forget the knowledge that you had in MBBS. And this was very clearly told to us by our teachers here too, that you can't forget that you're a doctor first. So you'll never lose that clinical touch. But make sure that your skill sets hain, that actually match what is required at the job. Otherwise, you will struggle.
It was really nice talking to you, Dr. Snigdha. Really nice after a long time.
So long. Love talking to you as well.
This informative podcast. I had so much fun today.
Same here. Anytime, Kajal. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's time.
Very difficult because they have to go out in all weathers, communicate to everyone, make sure that everyone is in synergy. Excuse me. I'll edit this, don't worry. Yeah, please edit this.
Nahi.